Non-Monogamy Help is a podcast where your questions about polyamory, open relationships, and non-monogamy get real answers. Your host, Lola Phoenix, is the author of The Anxious Person's Guide to Non-Monogamy and has been answering listener questions since 2019. Names and details are changed to protect your anonymity.
Hello and welcome to episode 184 of the Non-Monogamy Help podcast. I'm Lola Phoenix. Please send your questions to ask@nonmonogamyhelp.com and they'll either be read in the column or the podcast anonymously. You're more than welcome to let me know which. You can read the columns and listen to all the episodes at nonmonogamyhelp.com. Sign up to the early emails that I send out on Wednesdays by going to nonmonogamyhelp.com/email. And you can follow the column on Instagram at nonmonogamyhelp and on TikTok at nonmonohelp. And if you want to join the podcast shout out support tier, I will, with your permission, read your name at the end of the podcast. As you know, and you can do that by going to nonmonogamyhelp.com/subscribe. I'm always interested in promoting apps or activities that bring people together, and that's why this week's episode is sponsored by the app Be More Kinky. Be More Kinky is the leading app for helping couples in kinky or non-monogamous relationships understand their kinks, communicate them with their partners, and organize play. What's really great is that you can add more than one partner. It can be really great if you're in a long-distance relationship to maintain your dynamic. Every single feature in the app is designed around consent. Proposals must be accepted, tasks can be negotiated, and consent and communication is reinforced across every single feature. I'll also be doing a full review of the app on my Instagram account. If you would like to learn more about the app, you can go to bemorekinky.com. Let's get to this week's discussion question. If this is the first episode you're hearing, every week before I read the letter, I put forth a discussion question that you can use with your friends, partners, or anyone else to get to know them a little bit more. And this week I'm using the Otter Being Polyamory conversation card because I haven't run out of them just yet. And they're really unique little cards that you can get that have polyamory themed questions on them. And you can get them by going to nonmonogamyhelp.com/cards and get 10% off using non-monohelp at checkout. Cool. So this week's question is, how do you feel about engaging in sexual activities with multiple people at the same time? So I've always kind of contended on this podcast and in general in my column, like sometimes I talk about my personal life, and especially when it's examples of shit that I've messed up or done wrong. But I try not to be too explicit about my sexual escapades because I just don't like that idea, not only for the privacy of the people involved, but also I just feel like it's kind of, I don't know, it feels weird to me. It's not something, not judging anyone else who does that, totally not. Some people have some fantastic content that they put out. Some people put it behind a paywall, which is actually very, very good idea. Maybe one day I'll do that, but not today. It's not this day. So yeah, how do I feel about that? Pretty positive on the whole. And that's really all I'm going to say about that because because of the reasons I've just outlined. Anyway, so I'm sorry, you're not going to get any more details than that. The question is, how do you feel about engaging in sexual activities with multiple people at the same time? Let's get to this week's question. My partner and I are looking to move in together in a month or so. They began a new job less than 3 months ago and recently shared with me that they and a coworker have a crush on each other and that they were going to talk and figure out how they would like to proceed/act on their feelings. When I received the information, I absorbed it, but I did not process it until a few days later when I discussed it with my other partner and my meta. When I talked to them about it, my meta pointed out to me that she noticed I had strong feelings and opinions about my partner and his coworker, and that I should share my feelings and thoughts with my partner as soon as possible. After spending some time reflecting, I discovered that I assumed most people would not dabble with the idea of dating coworkers, and by extension, would not act on it since it seems complicated in nature. I believe the cons of dating a coworker seem to outweigh the pros. I worry about the repercussion, including fathoming my partner being terminated from work. I personally would not date a coworker, and I know that's my boundary, but I struggled with understanding why my partner would consider it, rationalize it, and act on it. I saw different opinions about considerations when thinking about dating a coworker, and I felt that my views were reinforced by my friends and members of my polyam support groups. No one I spoke with mentioned that they thought entanglement with a coworker was a good idea, even if my partner's coworker is also non-monogamous. this. Most folks I spoke with mentioned that they thought that my partner was inconsiderate of my feelings before making this decision, and most folks disagreed with my partner deciding to act on this crush at the moment since it feels like poor timing considering we're planning on moving together soon. I realized that I disagree with my partner's decision to pursue what they eventually described to me as an RA approach to develop and discover a non-platonic dynamic with their coworker. I do not agree with his decision to become entangled with his coworker in any other capacity besides the heteronormative definition of a platonic relationship. I question his character with his decision, especially due to feeling like the decision came out of nowhere. The only alluding of this change in their dynamic was when they asked me to proofread a message to this coworker to clarify an intention of an upcoming date to the library. And at that point, I thought my partner was defining expectations to avoid misreading the room, not that they were interested in a potential dynamic change with a coworker. When I checked in with my partner again, I shared that I currently find myself struggling to keep up with the current changes in our relationship since we went from being an LDR of 2 years until just about 3 months ago when he moved back to start this job. I'm a very slow processor of information and changes. It's probably my autism. I feel like being closer in proximity requires more labor to maintain our needs and wants in our relationship by active emotional availability and open communication. I mentioned that I have a lot of other simultaneous stressors, and I feel low in my capacity to navigate further stress/changes in our relationship, including this decision. I feel as if I was not asked to consent if I had the capacity to hold space for my partner in this regard, and whether I was available to navigate these new changes in his dynamic with a coworker. I feel as if my partner is also managing a lot in their life due to starting a full-time job. I noticed that their time, energy, and capacity are a lot different now than when he was a student. I worry that what I perceive as the term wanting to have it all, for example, overbooking his weekends to social commitments while trying to keep up with other areas of their life. I also worry that we are spending a lot of time together and that it is also keeping them from getting to handle other demands in their life like chores and other adulting matters. Although I think there is some truth to my observations about his capacity since stress is affecting their health and they report being exhausted and drained from work, I also worry that I am generalizing on behalf of my partner about their capacity to handle further stress or relationship dynamics in non-monogamy at this moment. I consider that I might have been making myself small by not asking for more of their time than our designated time together once a week. I think it comes from not wanting to add any more to their plate, feeling like too much or a burden. We share each other's calendar. I noticed that if I saw that they already had plans scheduled, I would not reach out because I was afraid of the possibility of being rejected, and I did not want to be a factor that would jeopardize or demand changes to their original plans. I notice now that maybe I've been projecting and I'm struggling to differentiate my fears and worries from a plausible boundary that I might need at this time. I know that I need to be clearer in communication of my needs and wants, in addition to not assuming other people's capacity for connecting with others and meeting demands of their lives. However, what I'm struggling with now is that my partner has expressed to me that they were hurt and upset by how I reacted to the news. They mentioned that they expected and wanted me to give them support and feel excited for them about their decision, to which I replied that I am likely going to struggle to do that. I shared that I wanted to be cool and chill with his decision, but that my feelings are not in agreement with this decision. I told him that for now I only have capacity to trust their choice. I also mentioned that I need time to figure out my emotional capacity and boundaries as to how I can show up and hold space/support for my partner in his decision and how it affects our relationship. I find myself thinking and wanting to say if they can wait to act on this crush, I think it comes from a place of fearing he might not prioritize our relationship or that they'll be distracted with NRE. I don't want to control or restrict his choice, and I am unsure what I need from my partner at this moment to feel safe and reassured. I need help figuring out how to establish boundaries regarding this. I'm also struggling to differentiate all the stressors in our relationship currently. It all feels very overwhelming. Any further advice would be greatly appreciated because I want to be sensible and allow room for all of our emotions and needs. I want to be able to connect and find solutions, but I am unsure where to start. Any other considerations I have missed are also welcome. Before we get to this week's answer, I want to quickly remind you of this episode's sponsor, BetterHelp. Quite often in a lot of my columns and podcasts, I encourage people to seek a polyamory-friendly therapist. And for a lot of people looking locally for a therapist who might be supportive of polyamory, can be impossible or out of their budget. BetterHelp allows you to find therapists online that you can send messages to at any time of day, and they also offer some financial aid. You can get 10% off your first month by using the promo code Non-Monogamy at checkout or going to betterhelp.com/non-monogamy. Let's get to this week's answer. So first things first, I understand going to other partners and metas and discussing relationships, but personally, I really think that's something that you shouldn't do. It's fine to ask friends about your romantic relationships. I think that's a really important thing. I think there's a big reason why people who are abusive try to isolate their victims and keep them away from their friends and family. It's because friends offer that sort of they're kind of biased towards you, but they can check you and also point out things that you might be missing. but metamors and other partners and other people involved in the situation are really not ideal because they have a skin in the game, more or less, and it's a really awkward thing for them. So I would really, really, really encourage you to avoid using your other partners or metamors for this purpose, because it's not really fair on them. There's a power issue here, and I just wouldn't do that. I would seek a polyamory friendly therapist, as I've said, to talk through things with, or talk through things with your friends. Reaching out to your community is absolutely fine, but really, really would avoid doing that again. Just because I just don't, in general, I just think they shouldn't be involved in that. That's my personal opinion. For me personally, dating a coworker is not an issue. I know that lots of people like to have ideas about what makes things messy and what makes things not messy. And for some people, if they don't want to date a coworker, that's fine. I think it would depend, because I personally am so rarely attracted to people. Like, I'm not the kind of person who like very frequently finds myself having strong feelings for people. So if I had strong feelings for someone and they just happened to be someone that I worked with, I mean, I would definitely have like trepidation for myself, and I'd definitely be a little bit anxious about it. Just because, for obvious reasons, like if you break up, you have to find another job that's super stressful. Like there's lots of reasons why I would be a little hesitant, but I still would want to act on my feelings because fucking YOLO. Like, you only live once. I would make sure obviously that I'm following any company policies or things like that. But like people, I know that now in like the digital age, people are more frequently meeting people on dating sites, but workplaces used to be places where people met people. And I get that like people are afraid of conflict and afraid of drama, but it's only as dramatic. Like just because you meet someone in a bar or at a dating place doesn't mean there's not going to be drama. Like this concept, like I get why people are saying this, but I just feel like there's a lot of judgment going on here that isn't really fair. Okay, if you don't want to date somebody at your workplace, that's totally legit. That's fine. That's your boundary, or I wouldn't even call it a boundary. That's like your own personal decision of what you want to do with your life. That's other people's personal decisions of what they want to do with their lives. But I feel like there's a lot I don't know about this situation that is calling on the ethics of your partner that isn't really fair. Like this isn't a non-ethical situation. I mean, unless it's somebody that your partner is a line manager for, that would be an ethical problem. But if it's just something it's just someone that they work with, I don't understand why all of a sudden there's like this big ethical judgment of your partner. And I think you're kind of like, you feel a certain way about it, and then you're kind of deciding that this means something about your partner that I don't know if you have any other evidence to suggest that your partner's ethics are not in line with yours. And it's kind of like not really fair. Now, the thing of it is, and the one thing that I will say about this situation, I wouldn't mind dating a coworker necessarily. It would depend on the context, but I would have a huge problem for myself and only the people that I am dating and if we're discussing this. I usually keep my relationships pretty parallel, and I also am solo polyam, so I don't have any interest in living with people. So there's a lot like that doesn't apply to me in this situation. But if I had a coworker and that coworker knew that I had a partner, but they didn't know I was non-monogamous and they hit on me or like confessed a crush to me, I would have a huge issue with that, even if I actually did have feelings for them, because what that tells me is that they're okay with cheating, and I'm not okay with that. So, and I actually I've had really complicated ethical situations where I've dated people. And I think now going forward, one of the questions I would ask somebody before I entered any kind of committed relationship with them is, are you okay with helping someone cheat? Because I'm not okay with helping someone cheat. I'm not okay with dating somebody who would help someone cheat. And I would not be okay with somebody who was attracted to me and expressed that attraction to me knowing that I had a partner and not knowing that I was non-monogamous. They had every reason to assume I was monogamous and basically tried to start an affair with me. Like, I would have a huge problem with that. I wouldn't be okay with that. If that is actually the reason why you're questioning your partner's ethical judgment, that's valid. And that's something to pay attention to. And I have been in situations where I basically had to come to an agreement with my partner that if they were going to knowingly help someone cheat, then they can't tell me about it, because they have to not involve me in that, because I have been with somebody and they were helping somebody else cheat and they knew they were helping somebody else cheat. That person said, I have a partner. They think I'm monogamous. They knew full well. And I felt like I was an accomplice by knowing that information. And I didn't like that. It made me want to tell the person who was being cheated on. Although, there's a lot of ethical considerations with that, and it's a complicated situation, but I don't want to know that. I don't want to be involved in that. And now going forward, like I didn't want to break up with them. But now going forward, I do and will ask anybody that I consider being in a long-term relationship with or consider being involved with, would you be okay helping someone cheat? Because that reflects some ethical differences that are not reconcilable between me and another partner. And it may be, if that's what's going on here, if your problem isn't necessarily that it's a coworker, but that it's somebody who knew that your partner was dating somebody else, if they knew, and hit on them or flirted with them or crossed some boundaries that like would be completely unacceptable in most monogamous situations, or at the very least questionable, then that is an issue. And that is fine to have an ethical obligation about. And I think that you're taking a good approach there. Like sometimes that's enough for people to break up. It's up to you in terms of how you feel about it. If you want to say like, hey, I don't support you being in this relationship. And that's what I did when I was dating somebody who was helping someone cheat. I was like, I don't support this. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to meet this person. Like normally I'm like fine meeting metamors, but I was like, I don't want to meet this person. I don't want to be involved. This is an unethical situation. And if you talk to me about it, I'm going to remind you of how unethical the situation is, and I'm going to express my discontent. I'm not going to be happy about it, and I'm not going to support it because it's unethical. And that's, you know what, that it is what it is. Don't, as we would say in where I grew up, don't start nothing, won't be nothing. Don't come up to me and ask me about the situation when you know how I feel about it. So that's how I dealt with that situation. That could be how you deal with the situation. But I don't know about the details here. And sometimes it gets kind of fuzzy, because like monogamous people also don't tend to discuss with each other what is cheating. And sometimes people can be a little flirty and it kind of, it's a little bit ambiguous. I hate that ambiguous shit personally, but people love that shit. People love, I don't know. I don't get it. It's not for me. But, sometimes things are a little, and maybe you're a little flirty, maybe a little, when it kind of, and nobody says anything, but it's kind of like obvious, except for if you're autistic and you can't read nonverbal communication, it gets to be like that. And I can see how if it was on these kind of weird, mildly flirtatious borders, I wouldn't necessarily consider that like I don't know. Personally, if this person knew that your partner was dating you, that they were partnered and they had no idea that like they're going to assume monogamously partnered, right, in this society, that little flirtatious little I wouldn't be okay with that. Like that would fall into unethical boundaries, and I think I would want that to be a little bit more spelled out. So like it depends on the situation. But I think if you don't feel comfortable, like I don't think this is about being a coworker, because obviously like them being coworkers provides them with an opportunity to like interact more frequently. But it's more messy to me if it's like that person thought that they were monogamous and then decided to flirt with them and kind of try and see if an affair was possible. Like that would be the elephant in the room that I would have to address. And I think like if I were in this situation and I would want to have a sit down, like it might be, this is a little less parallel than I like to tend to be. But I think when it involves like potential infidelity, like I personally I'm going to be a little bit more of a nosy bitch. That's just how I am. And I think I would sit down with my partner and this coworker, and I'd be like, so I want to understand what's going on here. And I would like to understand, because you were flirting together, and like, did you know that he was with me? Did you know that we were non-monogamous? Like, let's get down to the brass tacks here. And let's confront the issue, because I'd rather confront it than like being in this weird place of like, I want to be supportive, but then he's left with someone who was okay with cheating. And if they're okay with cheating, then it's not, polyamory isn't like permission to cheat. That's not what it is. So I would want to hammer that out. The other thing, though, I hesitate to make the suggestion for you, because I feel like you're project managing your partner. Like there's a lot, like you're way involved. And I feel like a lot of people in your situation, and I'm a bit confused about whether your partner's pronouns are they or he or both. So I'm just going to use they as a safeguard. But like, a lot about what's going on in their lives. You're like worried that they're not cleaning their own house. And like, you're like, I get why you're worried about that, but your partner is a grown-ass human, and you really need to step back from project managing, because you're literally like, you see what you're doing is that you look at their calendar, you're like, oh, there's a lot. I don't want to ask for what I want. Instead of giving your partner the opportunity to like actually make decisions, you're protecting them from making decisions, and then you're kind of blaming them for their own inability to manage their life. You're not like, basically, like you're kind of helping them to their own detriment in a way. If they can't handle having multiple relationships, like if they can't handle the scheduling bit, if they can't learn, then that's on them. And you protecting them from learning that lesson is not going to benefit either of you in the end, in my opinion. Like, I would stop tiptoeing around them and stop wrapping them in cotton wool and trying to protect them from the reality of being an adult. Ask for what you want. And if your partner can't keep up with that, then maybe you're not compatible. Maybe you want from him things that they are not capable of giving you. And shrinking for the sake of making more space in their life will only suffocate you. It's not going to fix the problem. And then what's going to happen is resentment's going to build up, especially like if you're not being honest about your needs, which, like I said, resentment's going to build. And they also cannot meet needs that you're pretending you don't have. And that's not fair to them in a way, because like what they might assume is you're not asking for more time, therefore you don't need more time. Therefore, they can fill this like time that they have with other people. And then you might be like, oh, they're spending more time with other people than they are with me, but you've not asked for that time. So like, you've got to stop project managing your partner, project managing their adult life. Look, I'm struggling there. I'm sorry about that. Because it's not going to help you in the long run in so many ways. And I get I used to do this a lot, not even just with partners. Like when I moved into a place with other people who were my age, I just decided that I was the house project manager, mostly because I just didn't trust other people to be able to be adults and like meet deadlines. And I was just too fearful of trusting other people. So I was like, I will be in charge. I will make sure all the bills are paid and I will be the project manager of the house. And it made me so angry and resentful and frustrated. It added way more stress in my life than I needed it to. And it was all my fault. Like, I can't really completely blame other people. Like, yeah, people could have stepped up. People could have been like, oh, I noticed that you're taking on a lot here. Let me take some of that since I'm an equal adult grown fucking member of this household. They didn't. But, I could have also not chosen to establish myself as the project manager of the house. And that's like a whole anxious thing, which like you can work on with a therapist as well. The kind of fear of like trusting other people and letting them fail or I get it. Like when you're in a shared household and like somebody doesn't pay the water bill and now you have no water, obviously that's a problem. But you have to allow other people the ability to fuck up or the ability to make mistakes because you can't control everything. And especially in this situation where you are basically ignoring your own needs because you don't trust your partner to be able to manage their own life, that is not going to work out well for either of you. You have to be honest with your partner about what you actually need. And there's a lot of sitting in discomfort in polyamory, but what a lot of people think is that it's just about sitting in the discomfort of like your partner's dating somebody else and you might be jealous. That's not the only discomfort you have to sit in. The discomfort of like asking for what you want and either dealing with being told no or, having to come to the realization that maybe, either you ask for what you want, maybe you don't like need it. Maybe it's fine to be told no. Maybe it's fine to have people rescheduled. That's fine. But at some point, if you are not compatible with each other, if you want more time than your partner wants to give to you, no amount of preventing the inevitable is going to change that. No amount of you tiptoeing or trying to manage their schedule is going to change that. So it's much better for you to know now than it is for you to know 10 years later when you've like exhausted yourself and resentment is built to critical levels. Like, get it over with now so that you actually know whether or not you're compatible with each other. I'd also recommend you like both sitting down thinking about like your ideal polyam situation, like how much time do you want to spend on your own? How much time do you want to spend with other partners? Like you do have other partners, so like maybe you already have that worked out. And, I think sometimes like what I notice a lot in relationships is that sometimes there are people who want to do the work, do this type of work, and there's sometimes people that don't want to do the work. And sometimes the people that do want to do the work end up project managing the people who don't want to do the work. And whilst I understand some of that, we really, really have to step back. The people who want to do the work really, really have to step back sometimes and let people fall in their faces, because project managing our partners is just not going to, like, sometimes it's fine. Like, relationships aren't always like a fully equal thing all of the time, especially like people get sick, things happen, but you can't be doing that all of the time for everybody. because it's just going to exhaust the hell out of you. So yeah, to recap, I want to know more, more is needed, more context is needed about this coworker situation. I would definitely have a huger problem with it, not because of the co-working, but because of the aspect of whether or not they knew that your partner was dating somebody, and the natural assumption then would be that you're monogamous and basically try to elicit an affair. There might be a whole issue sometimes. What happens when that happens is that they go ahead and they approach the person like, oh, actually, this isn't an affair. I'm actually in an open relationship. And then that other person stops being interested. Sometimes that happens. But anyway, I think that is more the ethical issue for me. If that's your reason for the ethical problem, then that's totally understandable. And you don't have to support, and you don't have to be, that doesn't mean you have to break up, but your partner needs to understand if that is the reason for your ethical disagreement, that you are allowed to disagree with this ethically. Now, if it's just that it's a coworker and it might get messy, I don't think that's a fair ethical judgment, because any relationship can be messy. The idea, I just think that people are being, I understand why people have this rule, and that's fine, but it's not fair to assume that just because you find a situation difficult because it might get messy, that because other people are less afraid of that, or they maybe don't mind finding another job. There's all sorts of reasons why people would be okay with this, but assuming that that's because they're willing to be unethical is not really fair. Again, you're project managing your partner and sacrificing yourself to make your partner's life easier, and that's not fair. It's going to build up resentment. You got to stop doing it. I think you're also way too involved in every aspect of their life, and you need to take a little bit of a step back there. I also I didn't mention this very much, but I also kind of disagree with the idea that there's a right time for your partner to pursue other relationships, and that your partner needs to wait until you're feeling better before they have other relationships. There's no perfect time, and sometimes relationships happen organically and people develop crushes and stuff that happens. It's not on our time that stuff happens. And it's much better that people are be honest about it rather than trying to I just don't agree with the idea that your partner should try and put a stopper on their feelings for someone else just because of a move. I just don't agree with that. I understand the feeling behind it, but I don't necessarily agree with that. And I don't necessarily think it's inconsiderate for your partner to talk about being interested in somebody just because there's other major changes going on. It depends on how well your partner is supporting you in other capacities. If they stopped, if somebody had passed away in your family and you really needed support and you asked for support, and then your partner's no, I have a date with somebody, that would be different. But that's more about not actually supporting you than it is about the timing of that date necessarily. It doesn't matter about that. It could not be a date. It could be, no, I'd rather play video games instead. That's why it's not about the date. So I don't necessarily agree with that. Really stop tiptoeing so much and wrapping them in cotton wool, and ask for what you want. If you're not compatible in terms of how much time they want to give you, that's going to occur regardless. You can't alter their compatibility by monitoring their schedule and making yourself accommodating. Ask for what you want, because if you don't, you're just going to feel resentment. It's not a good thing for you or for that other person. They should also be able to sit in the discomfort of telling you no, and you're kind of protecting them from the reality of managing their own life, and they need to learn how to do that. So yeah, I hope that helps, and good luck. Thank you for listening to episode 184 of the Non-Monogamy Help podcast. If you want to be awesome, you can sign up on the website to support me by going to nonmonogamyhelp.com/subscribe. You can also sign up to the podcast shoutout support tier. My current podcast shoutout supporters are Ermi, Mike Kender, and Claire Nilo. If for whatever reason you can't support by becoming a subscriber, there are some things you can do. There's a free tier that will get you all the columns and podcasts in your inbox on Friday when they launch at nonmonogamyhelp.com/subscribe. You can sign up to the emails that I send on Wednesday, and then you get a sneak peek before anyone else has a chance. nonmonogamyhelp.com/email. Take a screenshot of the podcast, share it to your stories, rate and review it on iTunes and Spotify. And of course, I also do have a course. So if you are interested and you want to learn more about polyamory, maybe you're thinking of opening a relationship, maybe you want to get started, but there's a lot of reading that people recommend. And I think that the reading is good, but I also think that there are some practical things you can do right away that don't have to involve 6 months of reading, or what I call the polyamory PhD. And you can find out more about that even at polyamoryfasttrack.com. So yeah, that's all for this week. You will get a new column next Friday and another podcast episode in a fortnight. You've been listening to Non-Monogamy Help. The music was done by Chris Albury Jones at albury-jones.com. Thank you for listening. Butter!